Hopefully the intro box noise machine thing that Chris made has finished now, and I can start this podcast by welcoming you all to Bugwatch, the ugly sister of that 6+++ show, the spikier, heavily armored, and consistently hungry sister of that 6++ podcast. My name is Swissley. I am your person that brings Tyranid stuff to you every so often, and I'd like to introduce you to other Tyranid player in the team who went 4-1 this weekend at LGT. This is Lewis. Everyone say hi to Lewis. Lewis, say hi to everyone.
Hi everyone, how's it going? You can tell you do this regularly live, Davey, can't you?
I'm slick. What
The
they call
intro
me?
could still be playing for as far as we know, and we're just talking to ourselves.
I'm a slick kind of guy. Everything moves very, very easily on this podcast. Great stuff. So it's great. We've got Lewis on today to talk about how he went 4-1 at the LGT with his Tyranid list. Very, very, very good showing. How are you feeling overall since the event, Lewis? How you been?
Yeah, had an absolutely cracking weekend actually. Really, really enjoyed it. Those big events like that, it just give you an opportunity to meet and see so many people that you just don't get a chance to catch up with regularly, and you just spend the whole weekend saying hi to people and just hugs everywhere. I mean, I'm sure in about 3 days' time I'm going to have the gamer flu, which is going to make me feel awful for about 3 weeks, but it'll have definitely been worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the way Chris got gamer flu before the weekend, so he was the super spreader at the event, I think. So, but hey ho. So, guys, we've got this conversation with me and Lewis today, but afterwards we still have that 6+++ show, so you make sure you stick around for that afterwards. Chris will be talking to you about all the different content that we have coming up as well. Yeah, so let's get into this then. Like and subscribe as well, by the way. Like and subscribe. We've got Paul Bridge in the chat. Hello, Paul. How are you doing? We've got Chris Parker. Boo, it's Lewis, he says. You know Chris Parker, Lewis?
I do know Chris. So Chris and I grew up together, and we started our Warhammer journeys together. So basically, Chris, please go away. I didn't invite you here.
Oh, boo. So we are going to talk about Lewis's list, right? And we're going to start with a bit of a public apology. So I am going to eat humble pie. I'm going to eat my hat. I called Lewis's list a few things. I called it trash. I called it rubbish. I said I put down in my acca that he was going to win 2 games. I was absolutely set on this being not a very good list. So you can imagine my terror as every single round Lewis just kept putting up wins, and it was very much like, oh, for Christ's sake. But fair play to Lewis for doing that. So you have my humblest of apologies, and now I get to interview you.
That's very big of you, Davey. That takes balls to say that live.
Absolutely. Now I get to interview you, and you can tell me how it works. So we are going to get the list up on screen. You can talk to us about. Sorry, I'm trying to catch a fly at the same time. You can tell me about how
you were doing.
Yeah, sorry. And you're going to talk to us about this list. So I'm going to get the screen on and then flip it to this. Not me. I don't need to be that big. Cool. All right. So we're just going to scroll down. We're just going to get Lewis up here. Okay. There we go. Let's have a look. So you can see Lewis here went 84, 94, 95, 40, and 93. So very strong scoring. And that's something I'm sure Lewis is going to explain when we talk about the list. It is very good at scoring. So, Lewis, do you want to take us through it, mate, and tell us what's in the list to start with?
Yeah, definitely. So I think we'll start with I'm running the Invasion Fleet detachment, which is the detachment that comes from the Index. And this is probably David and I's first point of disagreement in that I still think this is the best way to run.
Oh, no. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I think this and Synaptic Nexus are probably joint top.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. It's the stratagems for an Invasion Fleet that just absolutely make it. I can't see past them. The tricks and stuff with the others are quite nice, but it's just not having access to overrun, having access to the feel no pain, having access to bringing gaunts back, all in the same detachment. I think is just it's just really, really where it gets you. I have 2 characters in the list. I have got the Winged Hive Tyrant, who's my warlord. I've given it the enhancement for Alien Cunning, which is the enhancement that allows you to redeploy. Now, it's the redeploy that happens before you know who goes first. It's not quite as good as the one that's in Vanguard. I think it's in Vanguard.
Yeah.
but it's still very useful. And I also have a Broodlord, and in the Broodlord I have given the enhancement to make it a Synapse creature. Now again, this is something you wouldn't get access to in any of the other detachments, and actually it's the way, I think, in my opinion, that makes Gene Stealers and Broodlords are real damage dealer. Coming on to the battle line part of the list, which is obviously where the bulk of the points have really gone, because it's a big swarm. So we've got 30 gargoyles, 30 Hormgaunts, and 40 Devourers, 40 Termagants. Half the Termagants got Devourers, half of them got Flesh Borers. All the Termagant units are in units of 10. The reason for that really is to try and reduce the impact of blast on the list. You don't have access to the turn off blast stratagem, so I think really you want to be just losing units of 10 at any one time rather than kind of big blocks of 20. Onto the other data sheets, we've got the classic Biovore, has to go in every list. I think I don't think you see many Tyranid lists without it. Unit of 10 Gene Stealers to go with the Broodlord. Unit of Hive Guard, which I know is a unit you want to pick up on later, Davey, with the indirect Impaler cannons.
I just shake my head at every one of these units, Lewis. I just can't get my head round. Right, carry on, sorry.
Triple Lictor.
Yeah.
Very much umming and ahhing between Lictors and Neurolictors. The Neurolictors, obviously, they have the invulnerable save and they have the kind of battle shock shenanigans, which is really, really nice. But Lictors themselves just have so much better damage output, and it's something that Tyranids really, really lack. So I think they're actually quite tasty Lictors in combat. Ripper Swarm, just because I had 20 points left. Didn't really use it really, of course, for the whole weekend. I think I completely forgot to use it in 2 games, but yeah, it's there to score points.
Really, you went 4-1, guys, with a list that was 980 points.
I'm even better.
Give you a 20-point head start, he still beat you.
Trigon, who was definitely MVP in at least 2 of my games. Unit Tyranid Warriors, just the ones with ranged weapons, just for some synapse, really. Unit of Venom Thropes, I think pretty ubiquitous across a lot of Tyranid lists for that stealth and cover. And a unit of 3 Zone Thropes for some shooting power. So that's the list. It's got 150 odd models in it, so quite a tasty amount. That's it, really.
So Lewis, like, obviously, as I've mentioned before, like if people are Tyranid players and they look at lists that are knocking around that they're seeing, there's a lot of units here we don't see, and there's a lot to this that's very different to what I've seen doing Bugwatch. So if you talk to me about how you got to this list, what was the theory behind building it, etc., etc. What was keys build around and all that stuff.
So really, this is the first kind of time I've gone into an event with a list that I genuinely believed was quite good. Davey and I joke about it, but I genuinely did think this was a really strong way of running Tyranids. Previously, with the Knights and the Imperial Fists and all that sort of stuff, I've always just taken quite jokey lists and not taken it particularly seriously. But this time I turned around and thought, actually, I think I could probably build something quite effective here out of this codex, and wanted to do that. But it was quite an iterative process to get there, because I'm not someone that can just look at a book and decide what's amazing just off the cover. So it just took a lot of kind of rounds of practicing, really. I tried at the start of 10th quite a balanced list. I actually played Chris, who's on this call, and his Necrons, with a kind of mixture of monsters and mixture of swarm, and didn't really work. Wasn't really happy with it. Found monsters were quite tricky to move around the UKTC ruins, so you just lost a lot of movement just pivoting them. And then kind of just as I was iterating, I was just taking more and more big stuff out and putting in medium and small stuff to kind of fill the gaps, and was finding that regardless of what I was putting in, I was kind of struggling to kill anything. So I just kind of decided to go full send on the score secondary and score primary approach, and just try and weather the storm of my opponent's kind of offensive capability, shut down their primary as much as possible, and mean I could just win through just outscoring them, rather than trying to compete for damage or compete for end of game board presence. There's a lot of games where I didn't have a lot left at the end, and if my opponent had had 2 or 3 more turns, they probably would have got to the point where they'd have overtaken me. But obviously we only have 5 turns in the game, and it survives long enough to do that.
Yeah, so that I get what you're saying. So I think I've said it on the channel before, and I think you've just reiterated there. But we're quite good at scoring secondaries. We're a very good secondary scoring army, and I think the barrier that we come across is actually scoring primary, because we're not that survivable. Our medium and small, our medium ones, like our medium infantry, so your warriors and things like that, We have a 4-up armor save, which is rubbish. But we do have extra wounds, so we kind of make up for it in wounds. The problem is everyone brings damage 2, damage 3 weapons now, so we're constantly in this struggle of things just dying. But as you've said, you could just put stuff out there because you had all the different units to put out there. So you kind of built this list, and then how did it go through in terms of the practice games? What was there any like pivotal moments where you went, oh, this is a trick, or this is something that's going to help me win games?
Yeah, so there were a couple of quite important moments. I found out I was able to practice against quite a lot of different armies, practice against the Eldar, practice against Grey Knights, practiced against the Astra Militarum, Space Marines with Redeemers, and got a good kind of variety of different practice games in, which I think is important in any kind of list iterative process. Really, is actually just trying to get different games into the meta and not changing huge amounts. I was trying to commit myself to not changing kind of more than a couple of 100 points at a time. So it's usually take 1 or 2 units out, swap them for something else, and see what happened. But realistically, I was getting to the point where a few things were consistently working. So the move blocking aspect that a lot of these units can bring to the table turned out to be absolutely vital. The ability to just take up space so your opponent couldn't get lines of fire onto your primary objectives or get into positions to charge you, I think is really, really important. And to that effect, that's where units like the Gargoyles and Lictors really come into their own, because if anyone's seen a unit of Gargoyles, for example, they take up so much space. So you can really use them and their speed to just fill sections of the board that your opponent needs to get to be able to see you, to be able to take you off the primary. Now, the UKTC boards are quite good in that you usually have at least 2 primary objectives that you can sit on and be completely hidden from your opponent's deployment zone, which means if your opponent can't get out into the board, then they can't take you off your primary. But you personally don't have, as a Tyranid player, don't have any problem taking them off their primary. All of your kind of fast battle line units are all OC2, so you really do not need to put many models on your opponent's objectives to stop them from scoring it. And then by taking that board control over the course of the game, even if you can only do it for 3 turns, you're already so far ahead on points at that point, your opponent can't catch up.
Very nice. Very cool. So just to reiterate that point there, because I think a lot of people would be interested in that. So you send a unit to go and stand on your primary, and then what you're using, the Gargoyles and the Hormigans, things like that are quite fast, get across the board quite easily. You're using them to almost cut off the line. So talk me through how that works. Are you looking at how far their model can move and then seeing what angle you can get and then moving your guys to stop that happening? How does that work? Just for people who might not understand that.
Yeah, I mean, that's effectively it, really, because for anyone that doesn't know, you obviously can't move models through your opponent's models unless they have fly. So if you use some of your fast units like Gargoyles, and I'll come to Lictors in a minute, don't let me forget the Lictors, but if you use them to actually just fill up space right in front of where your opponent is, or where you think they would want to move to be able to get the line of sight onto your objective, you get into a position where all that opponent's unit can do is just kill the unit of Gargoyles in front of it, because it can't move anywhere to kind of get around the Gargoyles. It can't see anything to kill anything else. So all it has to do, you put a 400-point unit shooting into a squad of Gargoyles. And this list has 30 of them before you consider the fact the Hormagaunts are fast enough to also do the same. You've got the Lictors as well, which they obviously don't take as much space, so they fulfill a slightly different role in that in a lot of times I would be able to charge them in relatively early in the game, so that an opponent's unit, especially if it was a kind of shooting focused unit with not that much combat output, was having to fall back to get away from the Lictor, and is then in a position where it can't shoot, so it can't threaten the primary anyway. So it allows you, either through filling up space or through being annoying and charging stuff, to take up or get rid of your opponent's ability to take you off those primary points, which means that if you can score 10 on the primary three turns in the game, you've 30 points at that point. And if you've maxed your secondaries, and we'll come to secondaries, I guess, at some point, and I was always taking fixed secondaries, you're sitting on 80, 90 points straight off the bat, without really having to interact that much with your opponent or worry too much about what they're going to do.
Absolutely. Very cool. We'll get on secondaries in the games, actually, because I know that there's a lot of It was funny because you were tactical originally and I was fixed, and I think we've swapped places now.
Completely swapped,
Because
yeah,
I'm
yeah, and I think actually with the with the tactical, I kept drawing cards I couldn't do, whether
yeah,
it was no prisoners or assassinate or bring it down, all the kill ones. I found the list was really very able to go and be in a location, so go to one side of the board or go to the corners. Very good at doing that, not a problem at all. So I could get the 8s on those and the 5s on those. But as soon as you draw assassinate, and the
yeah.
list just does not have the capability to go to a place and then kill something, it just can't do it. And you take bring it down, things
So
like that. It only takes a couple of
sidebar,
bags.
sidebar on that because we've got 45 minutes. We're doing quite well on time here, right? Sidebar, lictors, right? I had a fun time yesterday killing Space Marine characters leading units by chucking three
Hell
lictors into them, which was quite fun because I adapted it, right? Because I'm doing Vanguard Onslaught, and we've got the Neuro lictors, I've got some
yeah,
lictors, and I've got Death Leaper, and just watching them all bully a squad of aggressors and just kill the biologist. I can't remember.
biologist. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite fun. So I would recommend lictors as that kind of fun choice for that. I don't think it's always working with 4-up invulns and things like that, though.
Yeah, it doesn't always work. I know, but there are a lot of characters, especially the characters that push out into the board quite early game, that
Yeah.
are vulnerable. And my friend Julian's on the chat at the moment with his Space Marines, with Redeemers and Aggressors coming out of them and things like that. And that Aggressor squad has that Biologist in it. And actually, the Aggressor squad, if the Lictor charges in, then the Lictor picks up the Biologist.
Hmm.
But as Julian found out, it works in reverse as well because the Lictor has fight first. It has precision. It can just go and target that Biologist. And
Yeah,
that's a
every
great
time.
trade because that massively reduces the effectiveness of the unit. And something with kind of that number of attacks with exploding 6s, with -2, with damage 2, is going to rip through stuff.
Yeah, man. I love him. I absolutely love him.
Okay, you're not going to chuck a Lictor in a Baden and kill a Baden, but you are going to kill anything less than a decent sized Space Marine captain, really.
You told me not to let you forget about lictors. Tell us about lictors.
Well, yeah, as I say, so I think and it kind of combines in with the use of the redeploy enhancement. I would always, the first 3 things I drop down are the 3 lictors, and they go in very, very aggressive locations. Now, that's either to screen out opponent's ability to use their own infiltrators, or to be kind of coming across like I'm going to be putting pressure on deployment zones very early. And I would often see it would make an opponent react. They'd either put something a bit further back than they were thinking, or they would be kind of focusing on one side, and then you'd obviously be in a position very quickly, but even though you don't know who's going first, to be able to bring the lictors back into somewhere a bit more safe. But it allows you to put early pressure on their deployment zone, but without actually committing any units to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Very nice. There's a couple of units here I do want to pick up on you with you, Luke, because I honestly will tell you now, some of these units have never made it into any of the lists that have done well that I've covered on Bugwatch. So
Yep.
I'm very, very impressed that some of these squeezed in. Let's start on the screen right now. Man, what on earth? The Winged Hive Tyrant, right? Okay, I can get it. It's
Yep.
it's in my onslaught list, right? I'm loving it in my onslaught list. It does a job for me. But you give it a heavy venom cannon and an alien cunning, the redeploy, which is before the first rolls. Talk to me about this Winged Hive Tyrant.
So I will concede the point of venom cannon. Load of shit. Absolutely awful. Never taking it again. I have a model. I have a Winged Hive Tyrant that's got a gun, and I just didn't want to rip the gun off, so I put the venom cannon on it.
That's a good enough reason for me.
Obviously, because the codex came out and then the points changed all very shortly before the LGT, I didn't get much chance. I only got one practice game that had the Winged Hive Tyrant in it instead of the Swarm Lord. So I was always running the Swarm Lord before.
That's a recent change then.
Yes, it was the very last change I put in, because obviously Swarm Lord went up to 270 points, and you don't get the redeploy. Okay, you do get the CP and you do get the Vect, but the Vect is nowhere near as good as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt, I was like, I need to save that 30 points. That would get me the Ripper, or I think it basically worked out that I could get another squad of other things in, and it just worked out points wise. But and then I just had the Venom Cannon. I thought, well, I just need to take that because I haven't got time to change it to a sword. But I think in future, go straight into a sword, because then you've got some melee counterpunch in your deployment zone, or melee counterpunch to support the Gene Stealers.
Right.
And help them do some more damage. Because I love the Hive. The Winged Hive Tyrant's -1 attack aura is really, really good. Or the paroxysm ability. Just pick one of your units within 12 inches and anything targeting against -1 attack. It's just great. You put that into any of the nasty combat units like the Custodes or the Chaos Terminators, and taking 1 attack off everything doesn't seem a huge amount, but when you've got a horde army that is basically entirely reliant on number of attacks being put into it to survive, anything you do to reduce that is really useful. And I do stand by the redeploy as well. I think we swapped on this as well, Davey, at some point in our opinions, because I just thought if you do it before you know who's going first, it's useless. But actually, on reflection, it did allow me to be very aggressive with those lictors and bring them back to safety and just not lose them. So I could screen out infiltrators and then just pull them back to where I actually wanted the lictors to be.
Yeah, I do like that bluff. It's a good bluff, isn't it? It's made you think. It's like flicking your fingers in front of their eyes before they
And
start.
with the LGT boards, there's set terrain pieces that you're going to want to put infiltrators in.
Yeah.
So, and you know your opponent's going to want to put infiltrators in them if they've got them. So it's like, okay, I want to put lictor here, here, and here, and now your infiltrators can't deploy there.
God, such a power play, isn't it, Lewis? I just love this idea of Lewis turning up going, lictors at the front, what are you going to do about it? And then just before the first turn, you go, only joking, moving them away.
Run away.
Okay, cool.
And it does actually, having that redeploy as well, when I fuck up, which I frequently do, it does allow me to correct deployment mistakes, which has value in and of itself.
So Winged Hive Tyrant, the reason why it was good, we take out the gun for the moment, but the reason why it was good is the paroxysm was helping your unit survive, which I totally get, especially with gaunts and things like that, which will die, and Gene Stealers, obviously. And then the Alien Cunning was doing things for you. Was it speed doing anything for you?
Not so, because it used to move quite a lot faster, and with flying the size of it, it doesn't actually move that well, and it has the same problem some of the other Tyranid monsters have in that getting it round terrain is a right faff. But
so
the speed did allow you to get to
Hive Tyrant.
The walking Hive Tyrant is a bit cheaper, isn't it?
I don't think he is now, right?
I don't know what the price difference is. I have a walking Hive Tyrant, but it's a Swarm Lord, so I definitely wouldn't be able to call that.
I'm pretty sure it's cheap. I'm pretty sure, actually, someone said this the other day, actually. I think it's the cheapest one. Fill for time while I find out. But there's no other use cases that that come to mind on the.
Well, definitely, obviously, the ability to get a free stratagem every turn is really useful, especially the 2 CP one for critting on 5s.
Is
to
that
be able to do that for free that's about tactic 1.
Oh my god, that's pretty awesome.
Really good. That really helped me in my Chaos Space Marine game because it just allowed me to mess stuff up.
Very good. It is. So the walking Hive Tyrant is 25 points more expensive than the flying Hive Tyrant.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yes, it's a lot more expensive. Cool. So Hive Tyrant ticked off. Okay, I'm buying it. Let's move down to the next one, which is the Hive Guard. So you've taken the Impaler Cannon, which is the
indirect, the 36 range indirect one.
4 shots each, is it?
4 shots each. You get 12 shots out of the unit, usually with exploding 6s.
Okay. So talk to me about it. Was there something that triggered you to put this in the list, or was it just you wanted indirect from the get-go?
Basically, and we'll come to secondaries later, but I rely on being able to be in all 4 quarters at any one time, which means I rely on being able to deep strike stuff into opponents' quarters. Now, I find that good opponents will try and screen that out, but what they'll screen it out with usually is relatively cheap chaffy units, whether it's kind of little, if you're an Eldar player and you just keep a couple of the, like the Warp Spider squads or anything like that, you kind of keep backwards, or the Gretchen and the Orc matchup and things like that. You keep, or Nurglings, things like that. You just keep a couple of units back. And actually, to be able to reach out and touch those screening units and open up a hole that you can then put a spore mine into, I find is really, really useful. Cultists, anything like that, anything kind of weak and chaffy that is just kind of sitting at the back and feeling like it's safe. You put 12 shots with exploding 6s into it, suddenly you just kill 3, you maybe kill 4, but that's usually enough that to maintain coherency, they have to pull back from the screen. Which means the Bivore then fires afterwards and is able to drop the Spore Mine in, who can then do the action and get all the points you need from that.
Cool. Very nice.
So in a couple of different matchups, they're absolutely crucial for doing that. And they're also good in, you take the Eldar matchup, for example, they've got loads of those little 5-man Warp Spider units and Shadow Spectre units, which do heinous amounts of damage and then fire and fade away. Can't do that from the Hive Guard because they don't really care where you are. They don't need to see you. So, and again, they maybe pick up 3. you drop 3 warp spiders from a squad, you're suddenly feeling a lot better about the damage output that's coming out of that squad.
Did you use them for Overwatch ever? Because they hit
No,
on
because
5, don't they?
you've got to be able to see. Now, actually, if we
Oh, of course, yeah.
come onto the games, if I'd have done that in the game against Mike Porter, I think I would have had a much closer game. So there is a way, I think, in future that I would deploy them slightly differently so that they could be used for their overwatching on 4s. But it was just something I thought about afterwards, and I was like, actually, if I'd have done those sequence of things, then I might have actually had a better chance in that game.
Interesting.
But easy to say, isn't it, without actually giving it a go?
So, for just for transparency's sake, behind the curtain, guys, I send Lewis all these questions beforehand, so he knows what I'm going to ask him. However, I was going to ask about the Tyranid Warriors, but he just dropped in that the Trigon was the MVP in 2 of the games.
Oh God!
So we're going to switch it. We're going to switch it up. Lewis, tell me about this Trigon.
Will do. To be fair, the Warriors is pretty boring anyway. It's cheap synapse. That's what it's there for. That's all they do. Their guns are rubbish. They just sit there and spread out my don't run away bubble. Trigon, for those of you who don't know, he has a 3-inch deep strike. Now, again, coming back to the way I tend to play the game about needing to get in all the quarters, needing to get behind stuff, needing to get kind of involved in my opponent's half of the board, having a unit that has a 3-inch deep strike is absolutely vital for that. Now, it forces, for people that worry about the Trigon, it forces you to screen really, really tight. There was 1 or 2 players that spent a lot of their time on their clock measuring all their screens out, trying to work out exactly where the Trigon could deploy, what damage it could do when it gets in there. Now, obviously, you can use that 3-inch deep strike on rapid ingress, and then you've got a turn of movement and can charge and shoot and do all the other stuff that the Trigon does. So he acted as a threat to cause my opponent to waste time screening him out. And then when he was able to get in, because it is, when you combine that with the Hive Guard, it is actually really hard to screen out 3 inches across your whole deployment zone without keeping a lot of units back, which again plays into my hands. The longer I can keep you in your deployment zone, I can stop you from getting out onto the primary and pressuring my kind of safe objectives, the longer I'm scoring points for, and the harder it is for you to catch up. So having the Trigon just as a threat is enough to cause your opponent to change their game plan, which is enough to give me a boost elsewhere on the board. But if you do let him come in, that's when he starts to cause a lot of problems in a lot of different matchups. So Trigon has 12 attacks with AP 3, damage 3. And a lot of matchups, you've got exploding 6s on that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously in a lot of matchups, again, putting him in on exploding 5s. So suddenly there's huge amounts of damage that come out of him. There is not many units, whether they're infantry units or whether they're slightly larger units, that can survive that damage output. And again, even into vehicles and things like that, AP3 is great into vehicles. Flat damage 3 is one of the very few units in the list that can go into something and be relatively confident it's going to pick it up. So take the Chaos Space Marine matchup, for example, I was able to drop him behind in a little tiny hole, shoot a few cultists, and then charge through into Forge Fiend, rip the Forge Fiend apart. He then managed to very flukily survive a round of shooting from 2 of the Obliterators, and then the Obliterators charged him. I was able to interrupt, picked up all the Obliterators, went onto his home objective, and suddenly after turn 3, I'm in his deployment zone with the Trigon on his home objective. So,
that's disgusting.
But that meant that my opponent, instead of using those Obliterators to annihilate all the gaunts with their silly indirect stuff, he was keeping the Obliterators at the back of the board waiting for the Trigon to come in.
So it's a distraction Trigon.
Exactly, and it's a huge investment point. And actually, if someone does that, and it did it in the Eldar matchup, I just use the Trigon to go and hold on my own objectives, one of my safe objectives. Go, okay, well, I can't put him in your deployment zone. That's absolutely fine. I'll sit on this objective. If you're going to come out and try and kill him, he's got 14 wounds, 3 up save, 2 up save in cover, obviously.
Mm.
You can put 5 up feel no pain on him. And suddenly that's quite a tough target to shift.
I think the 5 up feel no pain is a big game changer there, isn't it? Because with 14 wounds, I think that's what makes it viable. I don't think you can put this in a list that doesn't have the ability to give something a feel no pain.
Yeah, and that feel no pain, I used it basically every single CP I spent was effectively on that feel no pain.
Yeah, so good, man. So, I miss it so much. Very cool, man. Very cool. Nice. Okay, well, they're the units that I pulled out here in terms of the ones I was a bit confused about. But I think if we look through it real quick, you've obviously got the guy. So it's about the theme of the list really is scoring points with all these all the chaff, and the Trigon and the Lictors and the Ripper Swarm, which you forgot to use. And then if it's not being spent on scoring points, it's being spent on keeping stuff alive. So Zoanthropes, Venomthropes, the Hive Tyrant, things like that are just really kind of keeping it alive. Very nice. So that's the list, and that's the couple of units I pulled out. If you have questions about any other units, guys, drop it in the chat. I want you to talk to me about the games now.
Excellent.
So we can have a look at your opponents here, but feel free to kick off for me.
Yeah, so my first game was into a lovely guy called Tom and his Death Guard. Hearing lots of things about Death Guard, my nemesis Ed on the channel is still assuming Death Guard are shit, and would therefore have never let me live it down if I'd have lost this game. So there was some personal pride on the line to win this, which poor Tom didn't need to have to deal with, but there we are, he got it anyway. It was Death Guard list full of Plagueburst Crawlers, Mortarion, and then loads of Terminators, the Poxwalkers, Typhus, Lords of Virulence, all that sort of good stuff. And the Blight Haulers and Flesh Mower things and all stuff like that. So I think Death Guard, they're just not fast enough to get out onto the board. He deployed very defensively with his Plagueburst Crawlers, all in his back kind of corner ruin. So realistically, it took him sort of 3 turns to realise, basically I think he realised on turn 1 he needed to actually just push out into the board. But because everything was hidden behind the corner ruins, and I'd kind of put Lictors in annoying places that he couldn't get through, it took him 3 or 4 turns to actually just get out of his deployment zone, by which point I'd scored enough points. And this is the game where I was able to really kind of use the Gene Stealers to their big effect. The LGT layouts, for anyone that hasn't seen them, the middle objective is basically completely out in the open, but it has 2 ruins either side of it, where you can kind of, they're like hidden box ruins, so you can kind of like hide in the ruin. You're not on the objective, but you're kind of next to it. He would bring out either the Blight Haulers or the Flesh Mower things onto that middle objective. I would charge the Gene Stealers out, kill the thing on the middle, and then use the overrun strat to dive back into my home ruin. I didn't need to hold the objective, I just needed to be hidden. And I was just able to kind of do that over the whole game and stop him from getting onto it until Mortarion turned up on it on turn 5, but it was too late by that point, I was too far ahead. So yeah, basically I think he just played too defensively. He let me have the board, I just scored loads and loads of points, and he couldn't keep up by the time he'd come out of his deployment zone. I think potentially if he puts all the Plagueburst Crawlers on the line, piles them all into the middle with Mortarion, I don't have the power to kill the Plagueburst Crawlers, so potentially there's more of a game there.
Yeah, man, that's an interesting one, because I think that's something, without telling people how to have a good game into your list, I think that a lot of people with Tyranids just assume that we're still 9th edition and our flying high town is going to come over and chop them in half. And actually, if he just puts those tanks on the line, you're not getting through them easily. Maybe the Trigon can get through it, but the majority of the army is not pushing through those units. And I find that with monsters and Tyranids, that's when I enjoy them the most, is when you put them on the line, you just go, okay, try and wound this. And sometimes they just can't. Love that. So great analysis there. We've got some questions in the chat, but I will come to them at the end if that's okay, Lewis.
Yep, great.
All right, so that was Tom, and that score was 87-54, so clear win there. We then went into round 2, and once my internet has loaded, we will tell you.
I'm playing Orcs in round 2.
It
might actually be worth, I don't know if you want to do it now, Dave. Basically, in all of my games, I took exactly the same secondaries. I took engage in all fronts and deploy teleport homers, fixed secondaries in every single one of them. Reason I did that is because I think I touched on it earlier, but I don't like drawing cards I can't do. I would hate to be in a position where I've lost a game because I just, for 2 turns, didn't draw cards that I was able to do. And I tend to find that with the tactical, in the first 5 or 6 games I played with them, they were forcing me to put units out in the open in silly places that didn't make sense, or kind of randomly scattering models across the board. And that was just did not work with the kind of strategy of trying to stop opponents killing the key stuff in the key locations. Playing engage and deploy allowed me to be in very specific locations on the board for the whole game and know in advance where those locations were going to be, therefore being able to prevent my opponent from doing anything about it. So that's why I do it. I like the kind of control I have over it rather than the randomness of trying draw the cards.
Absolutely. No, I totally get it. Totally get it. I think some armies you play against them and you go, right, yeah, fixed, sound, job done. But if I come up against this list, Lewis, and I was your list, honestly, I would have been bricking myself. I won't lie. I had because for those who weren't here at the start, I had like sneaky child meme face, like Lewis's list is not going to do very well, and I looked at this and I thought that has got to be Lewis's list. It's full of boys. It's full of stuff that kills gaunts. But Lewis, tell me how you beat it. And to be fair, very close win, right?
It was incredibly close. It came literally down to the last turn, whether he could kill the Broodlord or not. If he kills the Broodlord, I don't get kill more. And obviously, it's drawing this list on the mission that's kill one, kill more, which is just for me is my worst list.
Yeah,
but it's also,
I hate that one.
I think it actually works for me as well because he also has loads and loads of little units, meaning I don't get kill one if I'm playing Custodians or I'm playing Space Marines. I don't get kill more if I'm playing those lists. So I know going into these games that I'm so far behind on primary, I've really got to work hard to stop them scoring elsewhere.
Well, just for those listening, just to explain about what this list is, we've got a Beast Boss, walking one by the look of it, Boss Skigrot, Captain Badrock, and a Snowbound Smasher Squig. We've got 2 squads of 10 Beast Snagger boys, 3 squads of boys, 10 boys. There's 4 trucks, which we're assuming they're going. We've got some flash gates, we've got some Gretchen, lots of Gretchen, 3 squads of Gretchen, some Grot tanks for the lols. I don't know if they're any good, you can tell me, Lewis. We've got some commandos in there, 2 squads of Storm boys, and some Squig Hob boys as well. So lots of like low AP, reliable, like low AP 1 damage and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Yes, and lots of attacks on the boy squads and things like that, obviously, clearly. And I found in this matchup that there's a couple of key units that you really got to try and deal with. The flash gits are horrific with exploding 5s and re-rolling hits and all that nasty stuff. You're in a truck, so they just annihilate stuff. There's a big unit of 10 of them. I think they have 5 or 6 shots each. With exploding stuff on them, so even though they're only hitting on 5s, they're there. But they do have heavy as well, so they can hit on 4s.
Mm-hmm.
So they're obviously absolutely devastating. He's also got all the boys, which in theory you charge a boy squad into a Gaunt squad. Gaunt squad dies immediately, which is definitely the case. And the Storm Boys and things like that, they can get across the board very quickly and press you very quickly. Now, again, I think it was a case initially, at least, it changed over the course of the game. My opponent being a little bit defensive, he was working very hard to screen out his deployment zone. And actually, when you're doing that big diagonal deployment zone, that's quite a large area to try and screen out. So by the time you've strung your Gretchen out, he's having to use Storm Boys and things like that to try and screen different areas out because he didn't want me to get behind. Again, with the Trigon, the Trigon pops up next to a unit of Gretchen, and if you haven't got something big back there, he's just going to start ripping it apart. And suddenly, all the boys and trucks that have gone forwards are not going to be able to contribute to the fact that I'm starting to eat his home objective. So he needs to screen out 3 inches everywhere across his backfield, which actually takes quite a lot of models to do that. I think we basically ended up in a position where he was scoring lots of primary very early because he was obviously hammering me, getting across the board very quickly. But I was just kind of consistently getting into little corners and scoring my points. And as we got towards the end of the game, I was able to be in a position where I still had Gene Stealers left. And I was in a couple of situations because the Orcs also have a stratagem where they can fight on death, which is really annoying. But I was in a couple of situations where I was able to charge both Gene Stealer and Hormagaunt squads into kind of 1 or 2 boy squad at the same time. And Gene Stealers, for anyone who doesn't know, there's 40 attacks in the unit with exploding 6s. He doesn't get any saves against them. They hit on 2s and they wound on 5s, so they get reroll 1s to wound. Just so the volume of attacks, 20 boys, a Gene Stealer squad rips apart without even kind of thinking about it. Got devastating wounds, things like that as well. So they even rip through slightly bigger stuff.
Very nice.
So I was able to get to a position where I was charging into a couple of units, forcing him to decide where the Fight on Death was going, and I was able to keep enough Gene Stealers alive that they were able to kind of munch their way through portions of their army. I was also able in this matchup to use the gargoyles quite well, if I do say so myself. It feels weird sometimes to talk about things I did well, but use the
Yeah,
gargoyles.
we're British, Lewis. That's just the way we are.
Look how amazing I am. To use the gargoyles to actually wrap trucks, and kind of force the trucks to stay back for long enough that by the time he killed all the gargoyles, I'd managed to pick up a lot of the other units and had opened up space in the board so that even when he committed the boys squad, he didn't really commit it anywhere that I couldn't just move around.
So you're doing a bit more of this move blocking we were talking about earlier.
Exactly, yeah, and actually using the gargoyles to actually just charge the trucks, wrap them completely so they can't escape.
Yeah. How many attacks does a truck get? 3?
3 or 4, I think. So
usually
kills 1 or 2 gargoyles because I can't roll any saves.
But then he can't get past you because you stood there, right? And then they get to the boys out and they're too far away.
Yeah, and we did have a slight annoying moment where he did a desperate breakout with a truck that had the flash kits in and failed the test. So the truck blew up, but that allowed him to then do emergency disembark, because obviously if he'd a desperate breakout the truck, he's had to fall back, meaning the flash kits can't get out and they can't shoot for a turn. So I'm actually quite happy in that situation.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But because the truck dies, he's able to get the flash kits out and use emergency disembark so they can still get out and still shoot and do all their stuff. So, but obviously with emergency disembark, you can move them 6 inches. So he gets them out 6 inches forward, so he's behind all of my home ruins, and then just starts opening up into stuff.
That's some big brain matrix stuff that he pulled.
That was very. I thought there was a feeling that I'd done everything well. I'd wrapped the truck, it wasn't doing anything, and I was just like, all it's going to do next turn is shoot my gargoyles, and I don't care. That's fine. Gargoyles 10 to the dozen. But no, they then start opening up into the turn against some warriors and all that sort of nasty stuff.
Very nice. So that was
a really close game.
Win. Came down to the last turn, but by the sounds of it,
Broodlord lived.
You pulled out some really cool stuff there. So nice. Moving on to the next game. What was the next game, Lewis?
It was my first game to Eldari. I played Eldari twice this weekend. This was into a guy called Tim, who announced when we first joined, he was very excited that he was a big 6++ fan.
Oh, hey,
I love
Tim.
playing 6++ fans because it means I'm not allowed to cheat because they will have a reputation to uphold. No, genuinely, he's a really lovely bloke. It was Avatar, Incarn, Bikes, Fire Prisms, Night Spinner, Rangers, Shadow Spectres, all the nasty stuff.
It's really strong. I think it's only, is it Fire Prism? You do see Fire Prisms in meta lists as well. Yeah, it's all the good stuff.
All the good stuff. The meta Eldar list. Now, as I'll never let our wonderful captain forget, I have beaten Eldar in practice, and actually the list. There's Tim. He was very handsome, to be fair. He genuinely was a really lovely bloke to play against as well. It was a really nice game. You never know going into Eldar whether the guy's going to be a bit of a knob, but no, he was good. Oh, steady. Well, okay, here we go. Shame he can't play Warhammer to save his life. No, so yeah, it is the meta Eldar list. I actually don't mind playing into the meta Eldar list because it does not have screening. It does not have enough stuff to stop you.
Doesn't have the rate of fire, right? Doesn't have the rate of fire to.
It just doesn't. No, it just doesn't have the ability to pick stuff up. Obviously, Incarn's annoying because it jumps all over the place. You can't really control it, and I made a couple of mistakes there that Tim's really, really, really good player and was able to exploit with the Incarn. So I could have lost the game based on keeping forget the Incarn can jump all over the place every time something dies, which is really annoying, as anyone that plays into Eldar knows. But yeah, I think I was just able to get to place on the board and start my scoring off without Tim being able to pick everything up in time. Again, able to use the gargoyles to basically make the Avatar stay in his deployment zone for the whole game. All that Avatar did was spend the whole game killing gargoyles. Didn't do anything else.
Meanie, that's horrendous.
Because it's like a 340-point unit, isn't it? And it's just like, well, fine, you can kill loads of squads of gargoyles.
Can't wait to take my God of Death to the London Grand Tournament this weekend. I can't wait to see what he kills. You absolute horrendous person, Lewis. No, well played. Great strategy, that.
Swinging the sword, wading through gargoyles, but still in his deployment zone. So,
like me trying to catch flies here at the moment.
I think Tim and I did spend quite a bit of time discussing afterwards how he could have played the game a bit differently. I think he was trying to pressure me quite a lot on lots of different objectives at the same time. Like he was pushing out quite a lot, which in the next game I play against Eldar, which I lose, was the right move. But I think with this list, you don't have a number of models to pressure. because if you spread out, each of those individual units does not have enough to pick up enough that the counterpunch doesn't actually then start hurting it. Because the one thing that Tyranids can actually kill is squishy Eldar bodies.
Yeah. It's almost like a sweep and clear, right? You take one corner, kill everything in that corner, take another corner, kill everything in that corner.
I think that
around, right?
when Tim and I were discussing it, I think we both said actually that I think if he'd have put everything on one central objective, focused it down, and not let me get anywhere near it, he would have been maxing his primary, and there wouldn't have been very much I could do about it.
Yeah, fine.
And then potentially, as you say, he could then push on to another objective if he felt like he could do it, because it was the one with 4 in the middle. So there's 2 sets quite close to each other. So I think he could potentially have then pushed on to a third, which really would have slowed me down. So there is ways that he comes into that game, but I think it was just a case that he can't kill my stuff quick enough, and Eldar players can't now. I haven't got Wraith Knights.
But a clear win here, a 19. Is that a 19?
95 to 49.
Sorry, I mean, I'm trying to do WCT scoring in my head. 19-1, I think it is. So it's a really strong win there, Lewis. So well done there. All right, let's talk about something I'm going to enjoy. Your loss. So you've won 3 games, and you are raring to go into your 4th game, and the name of death appears. Mike Porter.
So I normally look at my pairing the night before, but I tend to find I can't then sleep properly because I'm thinking about it too much. So I was like, I'm just not going to look until Sunday morning. Woke up Sunday morning, checked my phone, and saw his name. I was like, fuck. This man is the destroyer of worlds. He's a lovely guy to play against. I think he also beat our dear leader Chris as well. So he's taken a few 6++ scalps this weekend with a Harlequins list.
So I'll just quickly run through it. We've got a Death Jester with Fate's Messenger. We've got Fuegan. We've got Troop Master. So that Troop Master is awesome, isn't it? Just goes forward, dies on purpose, gets the Ian Khan over there. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 troop squads. Is that right? Yeah, 5 troop squads, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Star Weavers, and then we've got some other bits in there. So it's not all Harlequins. We've got some 2 squads of Shadow Spectres, 6 mans. We have 2 Sky Weavers, 2 Sky Weavers, Void Weaver, Void Weaver, Void Weaver, and some Warp Spiders. So yeah, lots of MSU and boats.
Yep. So quite a simple game. Won't go into too long. He used his first turn to stage up in the middle, then used his second turn to jump into my deployment zone. And in that second turn, he killed over 100 gaunts, slaughtered his way through near enough all of the medium bugs, and basically by the end of his turn 2, so start of my turn 2, I had like a Hive Tyrant and a couple of units left.
Anything you could have done to stop that?
Yeah, so this is where I think the Hive Guard would have come in if I'd been able to Overwatch. So one of the things he did was the shoot and scoot in turn 1 with the Warp Spiders, moved them really far forward, and was able to flame the Gene Stealers. Now, I think the Gene Stealers in this matchup are absolutely crucial because they're the only thing that can actually survive a troop squad hitting them and actually respond by slaughtering the units. I think it would have cost me the Hive Guard, but basically if I'd have put the Hive Guard out in the open, in the only place that the Warp Spiders could have gone to see the Gene Stealers, if he'd have committed to it, then I would have been able to Overwatch on 4s, kill the Warp Spiders, or at least enough of them that he then doesn't pick the Gene Stealers up in the first turn.
Yeah.
Because once he'd done the Warp Spiders, they killed 4 Gene Stealers, and then Fuegan comes in, or Fuegan comes in and picks up 3 or 4 more, and then it's just 1 Gene Stealer in the Broodlord left, which is just not enough to massively affect the game. I think if I'd gone into that with, because he stages everything up turn 1, if I go into that position with a full squad of Gene Stealers and loads of Hormagaunts all on the line ready to go, I can then jump out of the ruins, and if I can tag 3 or 4 boats and either kill those boats and damage the troops inside, he's lost all his maneuverability. I've still got all of my kind of swarmy, hoardy stuff, other than the Hormagaunts and Gene Stealers, hidden and not being killed. And then I think I've got a game. I don't know if I win the game, because I think his response, he then picks all the Gene Stealers and the Hormagaunts up. And then I've lost my killing power. But I don't know whether that then has bought me enough time that I've got a few more points on the primary, and I've got some more opportunities for secondaries, and he's lost the ability to screen out the backfield behind me. So, don't know. Tricky.
I think you've alluded to this in the previous games. The difference with Mike here is he's super aggressive.
Yeah.
And I think the other guys probably were a little bit too defensive. and that as a result, you've been able to kind of just score your points and then
Yeah.
kind of wave your hands in the air as you die. But
He didn't let me play my game.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So there you go. There's your learning, guys. Don't let your opponent play the game.
Just kill everything.
Just kill everything. So again, you've done this to a few people so far this tournament, and then Mike did it to you there. So like, no shame in losing to Mike Porter, though. To be fair.
No, it's what I think. And he said at the start of the game, he was like, the only way I win this game is if I just go full into you. And that's what he did, and totally annihilated me. So credit to him, he picked it up straight away. And I think actually it takes nerve to do that because those Harlequin units are not resilient. So
No,
if you
they're
get
not.
that wrong, you get your target priority wrong, you get your lines of fire wrong, and this thing he got all the positioning absolutely dead on. He got all the angles he needed on everything he needed to see. He's the only one that shot the venom throats first, so he picks the venom throats up really, really early. That cuts down the resilience massively on the rest of the army.
Mm-hmm.
Pinned the Hive Tyrant in a corner, so the -1 attack thing just wasn't having the effect it should normally have. He just did everything he needed to do, picked all the key units up, got all the targets, got all the line of fire right. And I think in that situation, there are a lot of players that might be aggressive but not get those lines of fire right, and then leave enough stuff that I can then respond. But he just played it so perfectly. So he thinks about the game at a level that I just can't get.
No, man, this is what we say about these people, right? We always.
Yeah.
I hate when people are good at Warhammer. Do you know what I mean? Anyway.
Oh, I think I have everything nicely hidden. I've got everything where I need it to be. It's all good. He's going to see a couple of units. That's not a problem. And it's just like, no, I'm going to put that there, put that there, put that there. And it's like that angle, that angle, that angle, that angle. I didn't even think about those angles. I'm playing the army.
Well, so that took you on a 3-1 moving into your last game. And I don't think you'll have been excited or overly overjoyed to have seen CSM.
Yep. Proper meta Chaos Space Marine list. You'll get it up now, but Abaddon, Chaos Lord, Cultists, Rhino, Chosen, Chaos Terminators, 8 Obliterators, Forge Fiend, and then that blue scribe thing.
Yeah, it's a funny one. He's kind of gone in between two things here because you've got the two cultist mobs. So I think tends to be like people just going loads of cultists on none, but he's kind of gone halfway here. And then, of course, the Chaos Lord with the Chosen.
Yeah.
But either people spam that now. Forge Fiend, people tend to spam that. He's got all the Obliterators, which are the bane of my existence. Being able to indirect shoot once a game is just like constantly terrifying in those games. But talk to us about this game, Lewis. How'd it go?
Yeah, so final game, we're playing this quarters deployment. He's taken first person taken fixed against me. He's taken storm hostile objective and to teleport homers, which actually I think is a really good pick into me because I obviously operate by taking the primary off you. I just stop you scoring your primary by covering your objective that you're sitting on with gaunts. So it means that if I try and play my game, he's scoring points for me doing that. So I think it was a really, really clever pick. I was able to counter it because I realised very early that actually if you just equal the amount of OC on your opponent's objective, you don't control at the start of your turn, and therefore he can't take you off it. So that worked on a couple of turns. Didn't work for the whole game because sometimes if you put like an odd number on an objective,
I was about to say, you need to make sure you have an even number.
It's like I'm trying to work out, right, so I need 5 gaunts and then I need something that's OC1 to go on this objective over here. And I was like, I don't really want to put the zone throat in Abaddon.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a lictor here, but he's miles away. I like it. Very good.
But there were a few occasions where you're like a Forge Fiend and there's just like one Hormagaunt and a Lictor toe on the objective and the rest of the unit is just like off the objective going, this is a really weird way to play the game. But it disrupts me completely because it's like, actually, well, I kind of need to be holding at least one of these objectives so I can get points. And those Obliterators, oh my days, that shooting out of line of sight once per game. And ironically, their kind of middle profile, the strength 8 AP2 -2 D6 blast shots, better at killing hordes than the horde killing version of their guns. Especially into me because that damage 2 means that I can't put the feel no pain on anything because unless it's jinxed, it's pointless. But this was a time I played this one quite defensively, actually. I had Gene Stealers hidden quite far back because I wanted to dodge the indirect from the Obliterators. And I just was kind of pushing out 1 or 2 units a turn rather than kind of trying to block him in. I let Abaddon and the Terminators get into the middle. I figured I wasn't going to be able to stop them because they can advance, shoot, and charge. And then get full rerolls to hit and everything. I was like, I just need to get you in, let you get into the middle where you think you want to be, and then not let you go any further, which I was quite successful in doing. He got onto the middle and then basically spent the whole game sat on the middle of the objective, which is fine when that's like 600 points of your opponent's army. They're just getting primary each turn. and again, was able to use the threat of the Trigon to mean that he kept one of the Obliterator squads in reserve with the intention of deep striking wherever the Trigon turned up and killing the Trigon. Which actually meant that he can only do that out of line of sight thing once with the first unit, which means he only picked up 20 gaunts in the first turn. Does that easily, but only picked those 20 up, which means I still had a lot of assets after turn 1, where I was kind of expecting all the Obliterators to be on the line. I lose 40 to 50 gaunts in the first turn, and then I'm on the back foot from immediately. But having the Trigon as that threat to come from behind really actually kind of made him change the way he was playing, so that's where it comes in. But yeah, basically was able to kind of stop him getting his kind of storm hostile objective secondary for a few turns, and then get into a position where the board state was looking like I was kind of in the corners and he was in a pile in the middle, and I basically just had a turn where I needed to decide whether I was going to go full in for the Gene Stealers and try and kill some of these Terminators. And I thought this would be the turn, so I dropped the. I thought, because if I can kill those Terminators in the middle, or at least neuter the squad, he definitely can't then push off the middle objective. I can control the other primaries, meaning he's just going to fall behind on the primary for the rest of the game. But obviously, killing Abaddon and 10 Terminators is not an easy task for Tyranids.
No.
So I was like, well, okay, let's go for it, and we just put everything into the middle in one turn. So got the Zone Threats ready, got the Hive Tyrant ready, the Warriors ready, Hive Guard ready, Biovore ready, and then he played that bloody stratagem where you can't shoot within 12 inches. So moved the Gene Stealers up right in front of the Terminators, and I thought he was going to use the CP for Overwatch, which I thought would be fine, and he left the CP, and I was like, oh, that's a bit, I didn't get Overwatch, great, the full squad of Gene Stealers is going to go in. Then obviously I'd forgotten he had that stratagem. So Gene Stealers are sat in front of these 10 Terminators in the pad and kind of looking around, going, guys, we were hoping one or two of these Terminators was going to be dead before we had to charge in. But I'd obviously committed to that point, so I was like, I'm just going to have to send Gene Stealers in, because otherwise he's just going to shoot them and then charge through to all the stuff that's behind. So I charged Gene Stealers in, and actually it turns out he's on the middle objective, so I get all my rerolls, put the exploding 5s on them, and picked up 8 Terminators.
Woof!
To be fair, Broodlord killed 2 of them on his own, and the Gene Stealers ripped the other 6 apart.
Yeah, that is 8 Terminators is unreal.
Indeed. But Abaddon and the other 2 Terminators then killed everything but the Broodlord and 1 Gene Stealer. As you can imagine. So I can't imagine what 10 Terminators would have done.
Corn was pleased. Corn
was pleased. Lots of stuff died. But that basically, at that point, I was like, okay, I'm feeling more confident now, because I thought I'd lost the game based on my misplay with the range of all the stuff, because I had the ability to move everything close enough that I could have shot them. Just didn't do it. So I thought I'd cocked up and lost it. But to be honest, Trigon popping up the back, the Obliterators didn't quite kill it, so Trigon was able to pick up the Forge Fiend and then the Obliterators. Basically meant I'd controlled his backfield, neutered him in the middle. The Chosen were just kind of chewing through gargoyles for the whole game, fair enough, and was able to pull ahead on the points, meaning I got 93-71 in the end, and my 4-1. Yes.
Oh, very good. See, gargoyles, man, MVPs of the book.
I'd have 60, I think, if I could be bothered to paint 30 more.
That's the only thing stopping me, mate. The only thing stopping me is having to paint another 10 of those will test my sanity.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, well, that rounds us up at the old 4-1. We've got some. I'm just going to get rid of that screen. Oops, let's get rid of that. Remove from screen. Okay.
Oh, I'm big now.
There we go.
There we are.
A nice little message here for you, Lewis. Simon Harris. Evening, Lewis. I had the pleasure of playing next to you in round 5. Loved what you did with the bugs this weekend. So I thought I'd share that one with you. Oh, no, I think Lewis, having gone big, has now gone home. I think he's now frozen. I'm going to try and answer some of the questions in the chat for you. There he is. He's back. All right, let's go.
All right, all the screens changed. They just went.
Simon Harris saying a nice little comment here. Evening, Lewis. I had the pleasure of playing next to you round 5. Love what you did with the bugs this weekend.
Oh, thank you, Simon. Simon's he's a regular now at Saffron Slam, so he's a legend.
Nice. Lewis, what's Saffron Slam?
Saffron Slam is the tournament of the century. Every single time it happens in Essex. Slightly more casual. We play on themed boards, play on really, really nice terrain, but still plenty of places to hide, not kind of shooting gallery sort of themed terrain. So try and do something a little bit different with Saffron Slam. So got teams tournament coming up in a couple of weeks. 50 players coming to compete. I think there's 3 6++ teams trying to actually win an event, which would be really cool.
Very nice. Well, we're running out of time. We're already over, so let's get through these questions real quick. So we have Joseph Feldhick. Question for Lewis: in your opinion, when do you find it best to cast Shadow of the Warp? Someone's a Magic the Gathering player, but when is it best to Shadow in the Warp, mate?
It varied a little bit actually over the course of the weekend. It made a difference in 2 games actually. It made a difference on scoring opponents' primaries, and actually in the Chaos Space Marine game, it made a difference on my primary in that I did it on my turn. There was a Obliterator squad matching a Hormagaunt squad on an objective, and I thought if I can Shadow in the Warp them and get them off it, then I will claim the primary, which I managed to do. They failed their test. It's tricky. Because it's not reliable. It's tricky to plan exactly when you're going to use it. I tend to leave it to later in the game when I've lost loads of stuff and my opponent's on a couple of objectives, but they've only maybe got 1 or 2 one unit on each of those objectives. That's the time to use it. If your opponent's gone, I'm going to get 15 this turn, but I've got 1 unit on each objective. That's just the time to use it.
That's my answer. My answer is when your opponent is on as many objectives as possible and they have 1 unit on each one of them. That's when you do it. If you care what I think. Nice. So thank you, Joseph. Next on, Keenan. So Keenan, we'd definitely like to hear a bit more about the Gene Stealer strategy. They are so fragile. I feel like they have to be played well. Any quick hints and tips on Gene Stealers?
Yes, I don't think they're fragile at all. I would disagree with Keenan there. 2 wounds, 5 up invuln. In Invasion Fleet, you give the 5 up. You've got the 5 up. Feel no pain on that as well. You also probably making the -1 to hit with the Venomthropes, and if someone's charging you, making a -1 attack and -1 to hit. So I think actually they're pretty resilient. I was finding people were under committing into them, thinking they'd be easy to kill, and then me going nope. And actually, realistically, you only need a few Gene Stealers because the Broodlord is what really does a huge amount of the damage. But even 3 or 4 Gene Stealers is putting 20, 30 attacks out. And with exploding 6s, with devastating wounds, reroll 1s to hit, reroll 1s to wound, you are actually doing a lot of damage because, again, AP2 is a really good sweet spot for AP and things like that. So
it's massive in Nids, right? Because we don't have a lot of AP2, so big fan of that as well.
Yeah. And I'm just using them on the UKTC to cycle that middle objective. They just threaten that middle objective, jump to the middle, kill something, overrun back out of sight, jump in the middle, kill something, overrun back out of sight, and then your opponent can't get to grips with them.
Overrun so hot right now. Chris Parker, on a more serious note than my other comments, was this list inspired by the Flying Circus used to run in whatever edition that was?
Oh, bloody hell, I think that was like 6th edition when Flying Hive Tyrants and the Endless Swarm were good, where you could just for free recycle gaunts every turn. I guess probably somewhere deep in my psyche it was inspired by that, where I used to just go, well, I start with 100 gaunts, but I finish the game with 300 gaunts.
Sound the alarm, guys. Sound the klaxon. Thank you, Paul Bridge, for a £5 super chat. Very nice.
Paul, you're absolutely a legend.
Someone knows Weatherspoon's price is here because he's saying buy yourself a drink on me. $4.99. Thank you very much, Paul. Much appreciated, good sir.
I think given he has given us a super chat, we are going to have to say that he was the top 4-1 player at the LGT this weekend. So,
was he?
Very good. With his Thousand Sons as well, so who I think copped quite a significant nerf in the data slate, so he did very well.
Yeah, Paul's a good player, man. He knows what he's doing. Unless he's playing our Paul. He's not the best Paul, but he's still a very good Paul. Then finally, Simon Harris. Any changes to the list? Give us 3 bullet points, if there's anything up to 3.
Ripper base, because I keep forgetting it. It's gone. Hive Tyrant's going to a sword, and Zone Thropes are going. They're just not very good. I think with the points that I saved doing that gets me an X-Creen, which I think, given the role of the Zone Thropes is to come on from reserve and do some damage somewhere, the X-Creen I think could do that, put him in reserve, bring him on, and hit someone with all that damage 3, AP3 shooting.
Yeah. I think the X-Creen, I always feel like it does better alongside other shooting because it gives the reroll 1s to hit.
Yeah.
Tell you what I'm thinking of, right? So 5 points more, I'll give you an old One-Eye.
Mm-hmm.
He slaps, man, and he don't die. He just don't die.
Yeah.
Anyway, one to think about. I've been playing with it.
And he's only on a small base, so
yeah, man.
Just doesn't quite have the same problem that the Haruspex has getting around buildings. So you have to use his whole movement to get out of a building.
It's 140 points, and the Geezer does like so much damage, and he regens wounds. Anyway, cool. One to think about. So thank you very much, everyone. That's all the questions. Oh no, there's more comments. Pickalack says it helps when you roll 5 plus pluses like a boss, Lewis.
Wow, let's not start throwing dice into this. I liked you, Tim, before you joined this comment thread.
Simon, we've run out of time to go through that, but you'll be able to watch this show back and you'll be able to see how what our chat about the Flying Hive Tyrant, because I specifically asked Lewis why the hell he was doing that. Do you think GW will continue to allow OCD models to score objectives? OC0 models to score objectives? I don't think they can score objectives. You need
secondaries.
Oh yeah, you can score secondaries. Ah, right. No, they
Like
the I don't think they'll do that.
No, I don't think so. I think the spore mine is quite easy to screen it out, really, if you think about it. It's just
that's what he's asking about. Right, sweet. Yeah, it's not actually that powerful. It's pretty good, but it's not like the best thing in the world. And as well, if you think about it this way, if your opponent draws no prisoners, it's easy points for them.
Yeah. So many times.
Purge the Four. It's a nightmare on Purge the Four. You don't want to shoot it on Purge the Four. But hey ho. Guys, we're going to go. But do not forget, the 6+++ show is on after this at 8:30 with Chris and the guys talking about the LGT performances, but also the results of the ACCA that we did. If you don't know, the ACCA was essentially people guessing how many wins our players were going to get. Tune in to find out the results. It's very interesting, actually. So,
tell you what, Davey, can I, before we go, there was
Lewis is on that as well.
Someone asked me a question at the LGT that I said I would answer here, and I haven't done it.
Go on, quickly.
It was a question about how do you play an army that has 150 models in it for 5 games over a weekend without getting like deep into the strategy to a point where your brain just gets fried.
Yeah.
And was thinking about it quite a lot overnight and into today. It's really this list, and I think it probably makes a good summary to end on anyway. This list really is about the macro strategy rather than the micro. Because you're not worrying about killing stuff, because anything you kill is just basically a Brucey bonus. It's really just about putting lumps of stuff in rough locations on the board where you think you need to score points, and then trying to stop your opponent from getting to your lumps of stuff. It's not really about the individual Gargoyle or the individual Hormigorn or the individual Gene Stealer. It's about what does that kind of block do. And I started thinking about my army in blocks of stuff and kind of waves of blocks of stuff, rather than individual models and individual move characteristics and individual attacks and damage outputs and things like that. So I think it's really, when you're playing a list that's got that many models in it, I think it's really important to think about the game at a much kind of more zoomed out level than you would say when I used to play my Knights, and every single inch on every single model and every single kind of piece of target priority is really, really important. In this list, it's to play a game in an hour and 20 minutes or hour and 25 minutes with that many models. You just need to kind of have a rough idea of where everything's going to go and then just pick stuff up in lumps and put it in those locations, rather than going, oh, let's measure this one model and then this one model and then this one model. Unless you're obviously trying to screen something out or do something very specific. But
yeah, exactly. It's almost like, I mean, the way I think about it the same way, I think about things as tools. It's like, okay, what do I need to happen over there? I need that move blocked and I need someone to stand on that objective. Okay, this unit can do that. And it's I think it's a little bit of that. I think if you're worried about using that many models, because I took a 140 gaunt list to Goonhammer, which I did a tournament review, plug. You can see it on this channel. It's not as daunting as it sounds. It's more physically demanding than it is mentally, in my personal opinion. But moving all those models, my back, I'm 6'3", my back was killing me. Oh, all right, you get to stand on the table with a gaunt. On that note, we're going to call it a day. Thank you very much, Lewis, for taking the time to come and explain to us all how you are.
Thanks for focusing on the Tyranids before the main show. That's the most
Are you
important
on the main show, Lewis? You are, right?
I don't know. There's been various messages. There's other people, I'm sure.
You might see Lewis on the main show. You might not.
If you're lucky.
Thank you all for commenting, and of course, if you have any questions, any further questions, put them in the comments below after this live video, and we'll come back and haunt them. The other thing you can do is join our Tyranids Discord, where me and Lewis argue about what's good and what's not, and we literally argue because we have very different opinions. So come and join our Discord. It's in the comment. It's in the description of the 6+++ show. You can find it there. Have a great one, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Take it easy.